Welcome to the Wicked Psychology Hangout stream. Today we are doing more of the trials. So we're going to be looking at Jessica and Daniel Groves' trial together. A little quick recap is that Jessica and Daniel Groves are being charged for the death of their infant Dylan. Dylan was discovered at the bottom of a well with serious injuries, and the parents initially claimed that it was an accident. Jessica initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but the judge found her competent to stand trial, so she then just pleaded not guilty.
Ms. Hutchinson, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, if you would, please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for our record.
Susan Brown, B-R-O-W-N.
Okay. Where are you employed?
I'm a forensic pathologist. I'm employed at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
I would just ask you in a soft voice if she could just speak up, please.
Yes, ma'am. Just speak up loud. You can scoot that chair forward a little bit if you'd like. That might help.
If you would, please explain to the members of the jury what your educational background is.
I have a biology degree, a bachelor's in biology from the University of Cincinnati, and then went on to medical school at Ohio University in Athens. Did a residency in pathology in Muncie, Indiana at Ball Memorial Hospital, and then did additional training in forensic pathology at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office in Dayton, where I'm currently employed.
Okay. And if you would, tell the members of the jury what certifications or licensures you hold.
Well, I have a license to practice medicine in the state of Ohio, and I'm board certified in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, hematopathology, and forensic pathology through the American Board of Pathology.
And you said you've been at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office how long?
12 years.
12 years. Okay. If the defense wishes, I'll go into all of her publications and her. We could be here for a minute.
The state's offering Dr. Brown as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
Correct, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we've had the opportunity to review her CV in this matter, and we would stipulate to, and we would agree that she's an expert without going into that in extensive detail. Thank you.
The court will find that Dr. Brown is an expert in the field of forensic pathology. Once again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that means she is allowed to offer opinion testimony in her field. You may continue, Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, if you would, before we get to the facts of this case, explain to the jury what the coroner's office does.
So as a forensic pathologist, I perform autopsies to determine cause and manner of death.
And how is it that you, or the coroner's office, I guess I should say, receives referrals or evidence and so forth into your office?
So in Montgomery County, we have outside counties that will contract our services to perform autopsies for them, and Scioto County is one of them. So your coroner here, Dr. Adams, contracts with us to perform autopsies for your county, and when he has determined that an autopsy is necessary on someone from Scioto County, he calls us to let us know that he has an autopsy that he would like for us to perform.
Okay, so you perform services for coroners in Montgomery County as well as other counties?
Yes.
Do you know approximately how many counties Montgomery County services?
Numerous.
Numerous, okay. All right. Once the coroner delivers to you a body that they believe needs an autopsy, what do you guys do?
So we start by taking some photographs and documenting how the body looks as we have received the body, and then proceed on to take additional photographs after we have removed, clothing and medical type equipment, to further document any kind of a natural disease or injury. And then next step is removing body organs to look for the same types of things, natural disease or injury, and all along the way taking notes and taking photographs.
Okay. And if there's any evidence that comes with the body, how do you guys log that evidence in and maintain it?
We do log anything in as evidence, and we will hold it in our facility until an investigating agency, the police, will either pick up the evidence or proceed on with the evidence in the way that they feel they need to further their investigation through, maybe a crime lab.
Okay. And are there documents that note or chart everything that comes into the office there and everything that you do while you're in the office working?
Yes.
Okay. So you would have an evidence sheet that demonstrates all the evidence that would have come in with the body?
Yes.
Okay. And then what type of documents do you prepare in regards to the autopsy itself?
So I take some notes while I'm performing the autopsy, and then from those notes dictate and prepare an autopsy report.
Okay. And do you also use a toxicology lab there at Montgomery County Coroner's Office?
Yes.
Under what circumstances?
We perform toxicology under for almost all autopsies that we do.
Okay. The evidence, let me go back to the evidence. Where is that stored?
We have an evidence room at the coroner's office.
Okay. And is that a secured location?
Yes.
Okay. How do you gain access to that area?
There are only a couple of people who have access to the area, and those few people who are employed at the coroner's office will gain access when law enforcement comes and picks up the evidence, and then we will maintain a chain of custody to show who came and picked up evidence.
Okay. Let me direct your attention to June 2019. Did you have an opportunity to assist in the investigation or actually to perform an autopsy on the body of baby Dylan Groves?
Yes.
Okay. How did you become involved in that case?
It is just random, really. So on that day, this is the autopsy that, I just randomly was selected to do.
Okay. So the assignments in your office are random assignments?
Just random.
Okay. Let me hand you, it's going to be what's been marked as State's Exhibit 36 for identification. Even if you could take a look at State's Exhibit 36. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
How so?
This is the autopsy report that I prepared.
Okay. And included with the autopsy report is also a toxicology report.
Yes.
And then also an evidence log or inventory sheet.
Evidence that we submitted to the toxicology lab.
And is that a true and accurate representation of the services performed there at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office in reference to baby Dylan's body?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you, Dr. Brown, to explain to the jury what you received and how you received it. Just the initial package.
So we received Dylan's body in two milk crates that were put together, the open end put together, so open end to open end, and these milk crates were secured together by a chain with multiple padlocks, metal wires, and zip ties.
Let me hand you what's been marked as States Exhibit 37 through 44 for identification. Doctor, if you could take a look through those photographs and advise the jury if you recognize them.
Yes.
Okay, how do you recognize them?
These are the photographs that we took during the autopsy.
The members of the jury, what's depicted in this photograph?
So this is what I was describing, these two milk crates that are secured together with a thick chain, which is woven in through these handles to hold these two milk crates secure together. And then the chain is further secured by padlocks, and the other ends of the milk crates secured by metal wires and zip ties.
Judge, if you would give her the laser pointer so that she can identify what she's speaking about to the jury.
Okay, so here we have, the top of each milk crate, which would be open-ended, and then the bottoms. And then they are put together with this thick chain and multiple padlocks and zip ties and metal wires.
Okay. And from your report, did you document how many zip ties, padlocks, and metal wires were there?
Yes, so there are 3 padlocks, there are 12 zip ties, and there are 8 metal wires.
Okay. If I could show you States Exhibit 38 and ask you to explain what is depicted in that photograph.
So now we're looking at the opposite end of these milk crates, and you can see then that this metal chain is going around this entire structure. And you also are able to see a little bit of what is inside of these milk crates, and these are very large rocks.
States Exhibit 39.
And so then this is the opposite side of this structure. So we're just kind of going all the way around as if you're able to walk around the whole thing and look. And so also then on this side, the same type setup with the chain and padlocks.
States Exhibit 40.
And so now we've completed the circle here with the opposite end. And again, the chain. And you can see a little bit as to what is contained inside, which is, another structure here, in addition to multiple 18 large rocks.
41.
So this gives you a closer look at what I'm describing to you so that you can see here are multiple zip ties and these metal wires that I've been describing.
State's Exhibit 42.
Another wire.
Okay. State's Exhibit 43.
Here we have the chain, padlock, and a zip tie.
And State's Exhibit 44.
So, in order to see what is inside of this structure, we proceeded to open the top by cutting the portion of the milk crates and sort of opening it up. And so that's what we're doing here in this picture, so that you can see that there is this structure here, which contains Dylan's body. Also, these large rocks. And then in addition to that, there is this iron anchor type device that is over the top of his body.
And do you remove that whole package out of the milk crates?
Yes.
Okay. You continue to take photographs step by step of what you're seeing there.
Yes.
Why do you do that?
To demonstrate the extent to which his body is concealed.
This time I would ask the witness to identify State's Exhibits 46 through 55. The record should reflect on showing those to defense counsel. And if you could glance through these photos and advise the jury if you recognize those photographs.
Yes.
Okay, and how do you recognize those?
These are the photographs taken during the autopsy.
And these photos are all true and accurate representation of what took place there in your office as you're performing this autopsy?
Yes.
Let me ask you about State's Exhibit 46 to begin with. What do you see there?
So here we have removed all of the contents of these milk crates. And so what we have here is on end, we are looking down on the top of Dylan, who is wrapped in multiple layers of plastic, and around all of this plastic is this iron anchor type device.
You would explain photograph 47, State's Exhibit 47 to the jury.
And so now we have just put it, the whole thing on the other side so that you can see just from another angle.
State's Exhibit 48.
We have now taken the anchor off, and so now we have numerous layers of plastic and duct tape wrapped around his body.
Okay, and so State's Exhibit 48 is mostly silver duct tape? Is that-
Yes, over the top of plastic.
State's Exhibit 49.
So now we begin to open this plastic, and we do this kind of layer by layer and find 6 different plastic items that are wrapped around his body and secured with duct tape, and the next one wrapped around his body and secured with duct tape over and over and over again. And so in these photographs, we have cut each layer, layer by layer, we have cut this open and begun to unwrap the structure, basically.
State's Exhibit 50.
And so now we're down another layer, which is different type of plastic with additional duct tape.
State's Exhibit 51.
And we're down to another layer of the same thing over and over and over again.
And it's not necessarily all the same plastic and duct tape. Is that
It's
right?
not. Mm-mm.
Okay. State's Exhibit 52.
And we're down to now another layer of plastic and duct tape.
And in this photograph, you're starting to see some debris from outside somewhere.
There is debris and everything is wet.
State's Exhibit 53.
Another layer of plastic.
State's Exhibit 54.
So now we are down to a blanket. So this right here is a blanket.
Dr. State's Exhibit 55.
There was another blanket, which was right here. And so now we are down to Dylan's body. And just the way that we have happened to open all of this plastic, what we're looking at is the back of his head and his back. So here's his head, okay, and it's the back of his head. Here's his back. This is his left arm. His right arm will be over here, and his feet will be down here. We just can't see them yet.
Before we move on, Doctor, did you all weigh that package before you started taking it apart, or do you recall?
I believe that we did. I don't recall what the weight of everything was, but I believe that we did.
Okay, all right. So if you would, tell the members of the jury how you proceed through the examination before we move on to the photographs.
So we continue to, take pictures every step of the way, and basically now we're going to remove his body from this structure and examine his body.
If I might approach the witness with State's Exhibits 56 through 60. Doctor, if you could take a glance through 56 through 60 and advise the jury if you recognize those photographs.
Yes.
How do you recognize those photographs?
Additional pictures taken during the autopsy.
First photograph is State's Exhibit 56.
So,
If you would explain to the jury what that photo depicts.
so now we're looking. We have flipped him over, and so now we're looking at Dylan and his face. The top of his head is very darkened, although his face is still normal tan white color. He is in a sleeper, and he has on a sleeper, a onesie, and socks, as well as a disposable diaper, and everything is soaking wet.
If you would explain to the members of the jury what baby Dylan weighs at the time that you get his body, what his length was.
He weighs 2,126 grams, which is about 4.5 pounds.
And how long was he at that time?
20.5 inches long.
State's Exhibit 57.
So now we have flipped his body over, and you can see the back of his head. Again, the back of his head, going down to his neck area here is very darkened. And then the rest of his body, again, with wet clothing.
State's Exhibit 58.
So now we have undressed him so that we can evaluate for injury or natural disease, any signs of natural disease. And so here we can see there is an area on the right side of his chest that is red. It's a bruise. Okay. The right part of his abdomen is a little grayish, greenish discoloration, which you can see when a body begins to decompose or break down just after a period of being deceased. He also has a red area on his left leg, which is a bruise, and a laceration or a break of the skin on his left arm.
State's Exhibit 59.
So this is a closer look at his face. This is our identification photograph. And again, you can see this very well kind of demarcated. You could almost draw a line where you have all of this darkening of his scalp, leading to right above the eyes.
Would explain State's Exhibit 60.
And here is his back, with the back of his head. Again, his scalp area very darkened in color. And then the right side of his chest is red with bruising, and left leg is red with a bruise.
As your autopsy progresses, you eventually look inside the body at these, at some of the things you've seen outside, and then identify things inside that you can't see from the outside. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. I would hand you State's Exhibit 61 through 67. If you would take a look at these photos and advise the jury if you recognize those photographs.
Yes.
Are those, again, continuation of photography that you're doing, having done there as you're doing the autopsy?
Yes, that's right.
You would explain the significance of State's Exhibit 61.
So this is his left arm. So just for orientation, his head is here. This is his left arm, his left hand. And this is the laceration or the tear of the skin of his left arm.
State's Exhibit 62.
So this shows you a closer look at his left arm, and what I have done is I opened his left arm so that I could demonstrate the fracture of the left arm. So this is near that area where it is lacerated or torn, the skin, and beneath that area.
Just for a second, if the record would reflect that the witness has pointed to her upper arm. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So beneath this area is a fracture of his humerus, which is just the bone of the left arm. And here is the bone, which is fractured.
And that's a complete fracture.
Yes.
Okay. State's Exhibit 63.
So now we're looking further down on his left arm. So this is going to be his left forearm area. His left hand is here. His left shoulder would be up here. And his left forearm is also fractured. You have two bones in the left forearm, the radius and the ulna. So both bones of the left forearm are also fractured.
Doctor, before we move on, let me hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 72 for identification. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
Okay, what is that photograph?
This is an x-ray that we took during the autopsy.
And does this x-ray demonstrate the fractures that you were just speaking of?
Yes.
Okay, so using the laser pointer, if you would identify those fractures on the x-ray for the jury.
So here we have his head. This is the right side of the body. This is the left side of the body. And this is the left arm with the fracture of the left humerus or the upper arm bone. And then here is a fracture of the left radius and ulna, the bones of the left forearm.
And doctor, is it accurate to say that those lower fractures are also complete fractures?
Yes.
You would explain to the jury what's depicted in State's Exhibit 64.
So this is his left leg, the left knee, and his foot would be down here. And so I have made this opening right here so that I can look at the bone inside. Surrounding this area, it is red because it is bruised.
State's Exhibit 65.
So here we can see the bone of the left leg. This is his left tibia or your shin bone, and it is fractured.
And again, doctor, would it be accurate to say that that fracture is a complete fracture also?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 66.
So we are getting ready to open his chest and abdomen area to examine his body organs. And here we are looking at the skin from the right side of his chest. And this area right here, all of this red area is bruising of the right side of his chest.
And State's Exhibit 67.
So now we have already removed the organs from his body cavities, chest and abdomen, and now we're looking at his rib cage. Okay, so his head would be up here, his feet down here, and this is his spine running down the middle of his body, and these are his left ribs. And you can see that the ribs are nice, straight, smooth bones. And here we have on rib 6 a large nodular area, which is a large callus from an old healing fracture. And the same thing on rib 7 next to it, a large nodular area, which is a healing old fracture, left ribs 6 and 7.
Doctor, in your opinion, would these fractures have occurred at the same time the fractures that we just looked at occurred?
No.
Before we move on, let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 73. Ask you if you recognize this photograph.
Yes.
the jury what that is.
So this is another x-ray taken during the autopsy of his lower body.
And does this x-ray depict both some of the arm fractures and the leg fracture?
Yeah, so it's an x-ray of his lower body. His head would be here. This is the right side of the body, the left side. This tag here indicates to you that that's the left side of his body. His left arm, you see the lower arm here, which is the fractures of his left forearm, those two bones of the left forearm. And then here we have the left leg, and here is the fracture of that left tibia or that shin bone of his left leg.
Okay. And you said these fractures would not have occurred at the same time as the rib fractures we just looked at?
No, there's no signs of healing.
Okay. So that calcification you were just speaking of you don't see that here?
Correct.
Okay. Doctor, if you would explain to the members of the jury your internal examination of the baby's organs and what's there and what's not.
So the organs are decomposed, just a normal process that you go through after death. And so the organs will sort of lose some of their weight, lose some of their integrity. So for example, his brain, when I examined his brain, instead of it being a nice firm structure where you can evaluate all of the structures within the brain, it was liquid.
What about the other organs in his body? His heart, his lungs?
They, while I did not find any evidence of any natural disease or injury, they were decomposing, same way the brain was.
Okay. Explain to the jury what sources you use to refer to toxicology.
So, under normal circumstances, you would want to use blood as your number one source that you would use to send something for toxicology to see what types of substances, drugs basically, are in the person's body. And then, blood and urine would be your top choices. But due to decomposition, I didn't have any blood for Dylan. I didn't have any urine to use. And so for his toxicology, we had to use liver.
So you would take a sample from the liver and forward that onto your toxicology department?
That's right.
Okay. Let me hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 68 through 71 and ask you if you can recognize these photographs. Doctor, do you recognize the photos I've just handed you?
Yes, these are additional autopsy photographs.
Okay. And what do these photographs depict generally?
These are showing his skull with fractures.
So if you would explain to the members of the jury what's seen in State's Exhibit 68.
So we have reflected his scalp away from the bone of his head, his skull. So we're looking down on top of his head, the bone. And this is the right side, this is the left side. And here we have a fracture on the right parietal skull, and here we have a fracture of the left parietal skull. So they're both on top of his head.
Okay, and about what is the size of each of those fractures?
The right side is about 2 inches, I believe, and the left approximately 1.
1 inch?
Yeah.
Okay. If you would explain to the members of the jury any other significance that you see in the difference, if there is a difference in these two injuries.
So the fracture on the right side, this longer fracture here, between the two pieces of bone that are fractured, there is some tissue formation showing some signs of healing. That is not seen on the fracture on the left side here.
Doctor, explain what we're seeing here in State's Exhibit 69.
So this is the same thing, just a closer look at the top of his head. This is the right side of the skull, and this is the fracture of the right side, and this is the one that has some tissue formation between those two pieces of fractured bone, showing some healing.
And State's Exhibit 70.
This is a closer look at the fracture of the left side of the head that did not show any signs of healing.
So would it be your opinion, doctor, that these fractures did not occur at the same time?
Yes.
If I could put these fractures up there closer together, could you show the jury what you're looking at when you describe signs of healing?
So, normally if a bone is fractured, the two pieces are going to be loose and not connected anymore the way they should be normally. And then as your body begins to help you and start to do some repair work, the ends will begin to be connected by some tissue. And that's what's happening with this fracture on the right side here.
Doctor, if you would take a look at State's Exhibit 71 and explain to the jury what we see there.
So we have removed the piece of bone from the upper part of the skull now, and we're looking on the inside of the skull. And so normally what you would see would be the structure of his brain, but due to decomposition changes, instead of seeing this nice, well-constructed construction of his brain, it's liquefied. And so it is really this liquid that is in here. And the liquid would normally be a tan white color because that's the color of your brain. And the liquid is pink.
What does that indicate to you, doctor?
I believe that blood was mixed in, making it a pink color.
Dr. Brown, is a brain bleed consistent with skull fractures of this nature?
It can be, yes.
Okay. And you said most of the organs are decomposing.
Yes.
Are you able to say from examining the baby's bones whether or not he would have been alive or deceased at the time that he was placed in the well?
No, not from examining the lungs. So drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion, so you really would need to exclude everything else in order to come to the conclusion of drowning. And I can't exclude everything else because I have numerous injuries.
Doctor, if you would, explain to the members of the jury what you believe to be the cause of death and why you believe that.
His cause of death is homicidal violence of undetermined etiology, which basically means that all of the information that I have from scene investigation, from the autopsy, from the toxicology report, everything all points to this being a homicide. But the specific cause of death can't be determined because a typical exam could not be performed because his body was decomposing from being concealed and in water for months.
When you say the typical exam could not be performed and therefore you call the death homicidal violence by unknown etiology, does that mean normally you would say homicidal violence or gunshot wound or stab wound or
Blunt force trauma?
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying to the jury that you just can't say exactly how this was caused?
That's right.
What method or mechanism caused it?
That's right.
Okay. Do you consider these injuries blunt force trauma or trauma?
Yes.
Okay. Let me hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 45. Ma'am, do you recognize State's Exhibit 45?
Yes.
Okay, and how so?
Another picture that we took during the autopsy.
And is that State's Exhibit 45 there on the screen?
Yes.
You would explain to the members of the jury the purpose and significance of State's Exhibit 45.
We took this picture to demonstrate everything that was contained in these milk crates. So at the far right of the screen here, we have the milk crates, and then on the left side, all of the rocks, the anchor, and all of the plastic and duct tape that had been contained surrounding Dylan's body inside of the milk crates.
And does all of this play a part in your opinion of this case?
Yes.
Okay, explain that to the jury.
This was a lot of work, a large extent to go through in order to conceal this child's body so that it would not be found.
Doctor, let me take you back for a second to State's Exhibit 67, which you identified as the rib cage and some fractures with some calcification there. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it your opinion that these injuries were caused while baby Dylan was alive or dead?
Alive.
Why is that?
Because they show signs of healing. That's the way that those calcifications are made. Your body's reacting to it. So it's a process that has to happen while you're alive.
Okay, Doctor, in State's Exhibit 69,
this is the skull fracture on the right side.
is it your opinion that baby Dylan was alive or deceased when that injury occurred?
Also showing signs of healing, so he was alive.
The remaining fractures, State's Exhibit 70,
The left side of the skull.
okay. And then the fractures to his arm and leg.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your opinion that baby Dylan was alive or deceased when those fractures occurred?
Well, by just looking at the fracture itself, there are no signs of healing. So those fractures would either have to be made after death or at the time of death. So right at the time of death, so that his body would not have had enough time to begin a repair process of these fractures.
So the fractures, you're saying either he was deceased when they occurred or they occurred and he died so quickly that the body could not react.
Correct.
What type of reaction do you see in a fracture if there's time for healing?
Well, you begin by seeing blood, and then microscopically you can see inflammatory cells, and then something called granulation tissue. So basically tissue starting to form in this area to help with the repair process.
And you mentioned earlier, Dr. Brown, that there was bruising to part of his arm and part of his leg.
Bruising to his left leg, a laceration of his left arm.
Okay, I'm sorry, bruising to his leg and his rib cage.
Yes.
Okay. Does that bruising indicate anything to you?
Well, it's likely due to blunt force trauma.
Okay. And then what actually causes a bruise?
Blood vessels are broken, and so instead of your blood being contained inside of your blood vessel, blood is escaping out into your tissue.
Okay. I think you mentioned earlier that you used a portion of baby Dylan's liver to forward onto toxicology.
That's right.
Explain to the members of the jury what results you received from your toxicology lab.
We found methamphetamine and amphetamine in his liver.
Do you make efforts to determine what the source of that could be?
You can't tell by looking at the toxicology results how the substance came to be within his body.
Okay. Did you review any records to try to eliminate possibilities of ingestion? Medical records?
Yes.
Okay. Explain to the jury what you reviewed and what you were able to eliminate.
I reviewed birth records and records from two pediatrician, basically well baby checks, and there was never any indication that he was ever prescribed any kind of medication or sick.
Okay. Was there any indication whether or not he was breastfed or bottle fed?
The records indicate that he was not breastfed, that he was bottle fed.
Okay. So he could not have obtained those substances through breast milk?
Correct.
Correct. Doctor, if I might hand you what's going to be marked as State's Exhibit 74.
Before I do that, Your Honor, may we approach the bench?
You may. Here in just of the jury here in just a moment, the prosecutor is going to discuss with the witness State's Exhibit 74, which my understanding are the crates that were shown in the earlier pictures. The remaining items from the coroner's office, because of their condition, the body matter that was on those items, and the current odor associated with these items, the lawyers have agreed to substitute photographs in lieu of those items. So you will have the benefit of the photographs, but you will not have the benefit of the actual items during your deliberations. Ms. Hutchinson, you may continue.
If I could ask you just to open this bag, take a look inside, and tell the jury whether you recognize this item.
Okay. Yes, I recognize the milk crates that I examined during the autopsy.
Doctor, again, if you would tell the members of the jury what your opinion is as to cause of death to a reasonable degree of medical certainty.
homicidal violence of undetermined etiology.
This time I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good to see you again, Dr. Brown. Just have a few questions for you. Could you repeat for the jury, you took Dylan Groves' weight and measured him at the
Yes.
autopsy. Could you repeat again what that weight was and his length?
So it was 2,126 grams, or that is about 4.5 pounds, and he was 20.5 inches.
Okay, thank you. Also, we saw pictures earlier of his head. It was black.
Yes.
Is that bruising?
So I could not determine whether that darkened area on his scalp was due to bruising from blood or due to decomposition changes.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. And again, there was 3 healing wounds. The ribs 6 and 7, correct?
Yes,
And the 2-inch skull fracture on the right side, correct?
correct.
Okay. The other wounds show no signs of healing.
Correct.
They weren't caused by going down the well, were they?
I don't believe that they were caused by going into the well due to the numerous layers and layers of duct tape and plastic that had him somewhat cocooned into this structure, and the lack of any type of tearing of the plastic or his sleeper.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dr. Brown. So his injuries, again, occurred either shortly before death or at death, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Again, homicidal violence, correct?
correct.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine.
Good morning.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I left something on. So we're talking about several distinct areas of injury, is that correct?
Yes.
Onto the child's body, correct?
Yes.
There are 2 areas that did show some signs of healing, correct?
Yes.
One being a skull fracture,
Yes.
and there was 2 ribs that were injured, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We'll just take them one at a time. The rib fractures, are you able to estimate how long prior to you viewing the body, or how long prior to his death, those were injured?
So in terms of just being able to give you a number, it really is not that precise. Everybody is a little bit different in their healing process. So no, I can't give you an exact time.
Okay. Do you know can you narrow it down in regards to days or weeks?
I wouldn't be able to narrow it down any further than, yes, it would have to be days to weeks.
Days to weeks,
Mhm.
okay. And the type of injury to his chest, were you able to tell how it would have appeared when it was injured? Would it have had some type of bruising or some type of outward signs to indicate there was that injury to the inside of the body?
Well, it's possible there was bruising, but without being able to examine him at that time.
Okay.
I can't tell you positively, but it's possible there was bruising on the outside.
Possible there was bruising, but there may not have been any bruising or swelling.
Well, I don't know, but yes, there's possibility that there would have been bruising.
What about swelling?
That's possible.
But there's also a possibility that there was not any swelling.
Sure.
Okay. So there may not have been any outward signs on the skin, outward skin, that would indicate that there were ribs that were fractured underneath of it, correct?
The outward sign would have been his behavior.
Right. But possibly crying from pain.
Rib fractures are painful.
Sure.
Because they're going to hurt every time you breathe. Whenever you breathe, your chest cavity moves in and out, and that's going to hurt.
Right. But at some point in time, that pain would start to subside, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And once again, there may not have been any outward signs of that type of trauma, correct?
On the skin.
Thank you. In regards to that fracture that had begun to heal on the top of his skull, and I believe it's on the right side, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did that indicate that there was any type of crushing injury to the skull?
Well, it's some kind of blunt force trauma.
Right. Could have been caused by a fall?
Hitting either an object or something hitting his head, or his head hitting an object of some sort.
So whether something either landed on him or he landed on something, that's what caused that injury, correct?
Yeah, some kind of blunt force trauma.
Okay. And that could have been the result of an accident?
I don't know how it happened.
You can't say, but I'm just saying it's possible that it was caused by an accident.
Sure.
I know we're open to all realms of possibility here.
Sure.
But you do not have any definitive evidence, any source of information that would tell you one way or the other whether it was an accident or whether it was intentional, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We did hear from his pediatrician yesterday, Dr. Hudson, and he indicated that sometimes with skull fractures, there are signs of bruising and swelling, and sometimes there's not. Would you hold that same opinion?
Sure.
Okay. So even with this type of injury, whether something landed on him or he landed on something else, there may not have been any outward signs of that type of trauma, correct?
The same answer, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Other than maybe behavior. The baby would probably not be acting normally.
Okay. And he could have been crying,
Yes.
but at some point in time, that would have subsisted and the healing process began, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And that could have occurred in as little as a few days, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In regards to the other injuries, I believe that you've already stated now on at least 2 occasions, those injuries either occurred at the time of death, simultaneously to death, shortly prior to death, because your conclusion is that they showed no signs of healing, correct?
Right.
Okay. Is there anything to indicate, or is there anything that you're able to draw any conclusion from that those injuries would have occurred from more than one person causing them?
I can't say by looking at the injuries.
Okay, thank you. And it is not in necessarily your job description to ascertain who caused those injuries, correct?
Correct.
Just that they were caused, correct?
Yes.
When they were caused, correct?
Yes.
And that they may be the source of this child's death, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I do believe that it is also your conclusion that you do not have an opinion that this child was alive at the time it was placed in those crates and put down the well, correct?
Yes, again, that speaks to drowning.
I'm sorry?
That speaks to drowning. And
Correct.
drowning is a diagnosis of exclusion, so I cannot tell you that he drowned.
Okay. That's why I just want to make
Yes.
clear that it is not your opinion that he was alive and he drowned when going into the well, correct?
Correct.
It would be your opinion that he was no longer breathing and did not take any water in, which would have caused him to drown as a result of going in that well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Over what period of time, if you're able to say, would a bruise be created? Like the bruise that you talked about on baby Dylan's head from his brow ridge to the back of his skull. Do you know what time period it would take to form such a bruise?
Well, you can't date a bruise by looking at there is not an accurate way to date a bruise by looking at the color changes that you see on a bruise.
Okay. So that bruise could have occurred, or the blood pooling in that area could have occurred very close to his time of death, correct?
That's possible.
Okay. It did not necessarily occur over a period of hours or days or weeks.
I can't tell you how long the bruise was there.
Okay, but I'm just saying there's no testimony that you can give in regards to that period of time, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Also, in regards to that bruising that was associated with his right chest injury, would that be the same conclusion you would draw as well?
Yes, I can't date the bruise.
Okay. Or how long it took to appear, correct?
Correct.
Also, in regards to the bruising on the leg associated with that leg break, is that also your same testimony?
Yes.
There's no time frame that you can put on that appearance, correct?
Correct.
In your direct examination, you testified that when brain matter typically liquefies in the decomposition process, it would be gray or green, correct?
Yes.
And in this matter, it was pink, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that that pink was caused by blood, correct?
Yes.
But I also believe that you said that there may be other reasons for it to be pink, or did I misunderstand you? That wasn't the only reason for it to be pink?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, well, that's why I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
That would be your reasoning for it to be pink.
Yes.
And that would be associated with that darkening of the scalp that we saw,
It's possible.
and potentially from the skull fracture we saw towards the back of the head on the left side, correct?
Yes.
And those are all things that you cannot date as to the spreading of that bruise, the causation of that bruise, or when that blood appeared, correct? Close in time to his death.
With the bruise, no.
Okay. Did any of the items that were inside the crate, which we saw, I believe that you said there were approximately 18 stones located in there, is that correct?
Yes.
In that iron object, is that correct?
Yes.
Were any of those a cause of these fractures?
I don't know.
Okay. You're not able to say?
No, it's due to blunt force trauma of some kind, but I'm not able to say.
And you're not actually able to say if they were caused prior to or after going into the well, but it's your belief that they were caused not as a result of going into the well.
Which injuries?
The arm fractures and the leg fracture and the chest fracture that was not healing and the skull fracture that was not healing.
So I can't specifically date those because there are no signs of healing. My opinion is that they likely happened at the time of death and likely not due to after death being dropped into the well.
Also, in regards to the toxicology, you do not know the source of the drugs that were found in the liver, correct?
Correct.
You were able to rule out that he was given any medication that would be associated with those tests, correct?
Yes.
But you're also not able to draw any conclusion from the information that you received if he ingested those by means of someone administering those to him. You're not able to say who did that, correct?
I'm not able to say who did it. He certainly didn't do it. But yes, I'm not able to say who did it.
At that age, he's not probably putting things of his own accord into his own mouth without assistance. But you would not be able to say if that was assisted by an adult or one of his parents. You're not able to say who did that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you able to say when those would have been ingested?
No.
Okay. When a body is decomposing, does it often lose mass?
Yes, it can.
So the weight that you determined his body to be in, which is slightly over 4 pounds, would that be atypical in a situation where a body close in that time was weighed when he was alive, that he would weigh less after he decomposed for a portion of time?
It's certainly possible to lose weight because your organs are losing some weight. So yes, it's certainly possible to lose weight.
So the weight isn't necessarily accounted to any type of intentional act or abuse on behalf of the caregiver. It could be accounted for through the decomposition process.
I don't know what he weighed at the time of his death, but you could certainly lose weight during decomposition.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to your autopsy report, do you still have that in front of you? Did you take that back? Do you have that?
I have one.
Oh, okay, you have your own personal copy. Okay, thank you. Do you want to read? Your Honor, may I approach? Just so she uses the marked exhibit. I'm going to hand you what was marked as State's Exhibit number 36. You did an overall exam of Dylan's body, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the outward appearance of his body, did you perform you performed an external examination and you have that as part of your report, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. On what would I believe be your page 3, marked at the bottom? If you could turn to that section, please, labeled external examination. Do you have that page?
Yes.
Okay. Could you read that first line for me there?
The body is that the line?
That's the line I'm asking.
The body is that of a well-developed, well-nourished white male infant who has a weight of 1,226 grams, a crown to heel length of 20.5 inches, a crown to rump length of 14 inches, a head circumference of 15.5 inches, a chest circumference of 14 inches, an abdominal circumference of 14 inches, and a foot length of 3 inches.
Okay, thank you. So your external examination of this body, other than the fractures that you uncovered and the bruising that you uncovered, he was a well-developed, well-nourished white male infant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge, or as part of your education or experience, are you able to date how fast an infant grows?
You probably would. Probably a pediatrician would be better suited to answer that question.
Okay. I guess I was just, do you know how long he would be? Like what is there any type of rough guideline?
Well, there are growth charts.
When this answer, a pediatrician would be more appropriate to answer these questions.
She believes she can give an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to that issue. I will sustain the objection.
Your Honor, I believe that she testified that she is trained in anatomy.
She said a pediatrician would be more appropriate, so unless you can lay a foundation that she can give that kind of opinion.
May I have an opportunity to try to lay that foundation?
Briefly.
Okay, thank you. Have you studied the field of anatomy?
I'm sorry?
Have you studied the field of anatomy?
Yes.
Okay. Have you studied or had any education or training in how bones grow and their ability to grow and how they grow, what causes them to grow or not to grow? Lack of better words.
Through medical school, yes.
Okay. In your duties as a coroner, do you take into consideration length, weight, other measurements in regards to bone length and what length they are whenever you're examining in a body?
Not bone length, but certainly we're weighing and measuring each person that comes through the coroner's office. But it isn't something that we would do on a regular basis, as a pediatrician would every time you see a child come in and you're tracking this one child and can follow his or her growth and development.
Okay.
So that isn't really something that we're doing at the coroner's office.
If you had a measurement of this child in February of 2019.
Objection, Your Honor.
Address the question.
If you had a length measurement of this child in February of 2019, and knowing the length of the baby's body when you received him into your office, could you tell if the baby had grown and how possibly when his life would have ended and he stopped growing from that previous measurement to your measurement?
No.
Okay. I appreciate your answer. Okay. Your Honor, if I can have just a moment. Your Honor, at this time I do not have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any redirect?
Just a few, Your Honor.
Doctor, you were asked on cross-examination about the substances that were detected in toxicology. Is it your medical opinion that those substances could have been detected in his liver and could have stayed there from birth?
No, not that long. So anytime you, whatever way you ingest something, your body will break down that substance. Any kind of a drug. A drug you're getting from your doctor, your body will break down that substance until eventually the substance is gone. And so it wouldn't still be in his system from birth.
So he would have had to have been exposed at some other time,
Yes,
not in utero, for this to show up in his liver.
yes.
Okay. You were asked about, and I'm not sure it was that clear, but rocks causing these injuries. and you said yes, do you mean rocks caused these injuries as it went into the well, or you could use a rock to cause these injuries?
I meant that you could use a rock to cause these injuries.
So if someone bashed baby Dylan in the head with one of these rocks, it would result in the skull fracture, possibly.
Yes.
You were asked about skull fractures being accidental. And I think you already said a 2-month-old baby could not have an accident himself that would result in these fractures. Is that right?
You would have to present the scenario to me.
In other words,
but he's not playing.
Walking
Yes.
or playing.
Yes.
Okay. Do the types of fractures or the fact that he has fractures to his ribs at 2 months old indicate anything to you?
He has been subjected to some kind of trauma.
Okay. Are there fractures that you would say are typical in child abuse situations that you see more commonly than others?
Well, there shouldn't ever be any types of fractures. But certainly as, kids get older and become toddlers, then they would be in a situation where, much more likely to have an accidental fracture of some kind. But a 2-month-old does not fall into that category.
Okay. And it was sort of isolating injuries, but the rib fractures, you said those fractures occurred, you can't date them, but can you say whether or not they would have occurred first or last based on the signs of healing?
Compared to all of the other fractures, they would have occurred first just based on signs of healing.
Okay. And then what would have occurred next?
The other fracture that he has that shows any signs of healing at all, which is the right skull fracture.
The 2-inch fracture.
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly would be the remaining fractures of the arm, leg, and skull, the 1-inch fracture.
That's right.
So are you telling this jury it is your opinion that these were at least 3 different incidents?
Yes.
You were asked about drowning. Can you exclude drowning based on what your examination is?
I can't exclude drowning, but I can't include it either because you don't have a specific sign. There is not a specific pathognomonic sign that somebody has when they drowned.
So if you received the body and there were none of these other injuries, fractures and bruising, would you then say that he had probably drowned?
It certainly would be more possible that he had drowned, yes.
Okay. So what you're telling this jury in here is you can't say either way.
Yes.
Okay. But what you do have evidence of is all of this homicidal violence.
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Hutchinson, Mr. Stratton, any recross?
Yeah, just Dr. Brown, not to beat a dead horse here, but I just want to ask you a question about this. Dr. Hudson, who is Dylan's pediatrician, testified earlier that on 2/7 that he weighed 7 pounds 2 ounces and that he was 19 and a half inches long. Then on February 21st, he said Dylan was 7 pounds 15 ounces, 20.3 inches long. The date of your autopsy is when?
June 13th.
June 13th. You said he weighed 4 pounds 8 ounces, correct?
Yes.
And you said he was 20.5 inches long, correct?
Yes.
Would you be surprised if his date of death is March 28th based upon...
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach the bench?
Question, Mr. Stratton.
again, Dr. Brown, you said on 6/12 he weighed 4 pounds 8 ounces and was 20.5 inches long, correct?
Yes.
Back where we were. And that Dr. Hudson had testified on 2/21 that he weighed 7 pounds 15 ounces and 20.3 inches long. Would that be consistent, or would you be surprised if the date of death was closer to 2/21 or closer to 6/12?
I can't use his weight to determine his date of death.
What about his length?
I can't use his length either to determine the date of his death.
Thanks, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, so that wraps up the testimony for the forensic pathologist. That was a lot for sure. Holy cow. So we are going to look at the firefighters. So we're going to kind of go a little bit back in time from what she was talking about. She was talking about, the autopsy and stuff. So going back in time, we will be hearing what the firefighters' experience was finding Dylan at the bottom. They're the ones that pulled him out, it seems. And, through this testimony, it's just reminding us, how many people are really affected by these cases, not just the family and friends and people in their immediate life, but we'll definitely see how it affected the firefighters as well. So let's get into that.
Teaman, you may inquire.
Sir, would you state your name for the record?
Stephen Ray Gamble,
How do you spell your last name for the court reporter?
Gambill.
And where do you live?
I live in Otway.
How are you employed?
I'm a union electrician.
And do you serve your community as a volunteer fireman as well?
Yes, sir.
What fire department do you serve with?
Otway FD.
And what are your duties there?
Basically, I'm we of course fight fires, extrication on car wrecks, just anything really to help out the community.
Any kind of issues in the community that the fire department can assist with?
Yes.
You guys stop what you're doing and come around?
Yeah, we fight a lot of forest fires, structure fires.
Sir, I'd like to direct your attention to June 12th of 2019. Do you recall that date?
Yes, sir.
With regard to your duties as a fireman, what happened that day?
I got home about 4:30 from work, and the call had already come in. The call come in as that we needed to call dispatch to get details for the run. Now, usually when it's usually something different, not a typical run that we go on. By the time
sorry to interrupt, could you explain to the jury, as a volunteer fireman, how you're called to duty, so to speak?
We all have pagers, radios that dispatch county can set off to let us all know that we need to have a fire run. When that goes off, we all report in that we've acknowledged the page and report to the fire department.
Okay. And you indicated this one wasn't the typical call.
No, typically they tell us, Otway FD, you have a run. We have a code 4 car wreck, or we have a structure fire, and they give the address right over the radio. This was, hey, we need you to call county to get details for the information. So when I got home, the page had already come in. My wife met me at the door with my radio, said you need to go to the FD. My brother, who is assistant chief, was already there. He had already called county and told us that that we was requested to try and pump out a well for the sheriff's department.
Okay. So what did you do then?
It's not something that we typically do, so we tried to gather as many tools, materials that we had on hand to try and do this task. We had a rough idea of why we were doing it. We had heard rumors. We did not know. We did not know where the well was, how we could get access to it. We have very large trucks that could pump things out, so we tried to gather as much tools and material that we could find to accomplish this task. And then we tried to report to the location on the address given.
Do you have a rough count on how many of the fire department personnel were able to come for this run?
Originally, the first call out, there was 3 of us. And once we figured out that we could not get our large engine back to the scene, we then broke off to 2 of the guys, my brother, Rick, and Dan, went to try to access a pump with a long hose, some equipment to try and fish in the well. And when they returned, they brought another firefighter with them, Mike, to try and help out as well.
Okay. Let's back up a moment. So where were you directed to go to assist the sheriff's department?
We were given an address. It was on Mount Hope Road. The address was real close to a church camp. Is the only reason we could even pull something up on our phones to try and find where to go. When we showed up there, of course there was no one that we could see, so we waited, and we could see some tire tracks in a field. Dan and Rick at that time were in a smaller truck. I was in a large fire engine and pumper truck. They went back to see if they could find someone after we'd been there for roughly 10 minutes, and they had took a smaller truck and went back down the road to try and find someone. At that time, I got out of the engine and I started walking through the field, and that's when I noticed a black SUV coming out of the field, and that's when I introduced myself to the deputies.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Let the record reflect that in the council was the March States Exhibit 25. Sir, I'm handing you what has been marked as States Exhibit 25. Do you recognize what's depicted in States Exhibit 25?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is States Exhibit 25?
It is a picture, a topographical picture of Mount Hope Road, the location of the church camp, and the well that is in a field adjacent to it.
Okay. Is that a Google Maps version of it?
Yes, sir. It's pretty much the same one we used to try and figure out where we were going.
Okay. Now, is it a fair statement that you can't say when Google took this picture?
No, sir.
But does it accurately depict Mount Hope Road and the area?
Yes, sir.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
You can answer out loud, please.
Sorry.
All right.
Sir, can you see that map all right from where you're seated?
Yes.
The judge may have a pointer. Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, is this up depicted on the overhead? Is that what I just previously had you identify as States Exhibit 25?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you could you on this map point out, well, first of all, what's the general area we see here on this map?
Say again.
What's the general area that this map depicts?
It's Mount Hope. The Boy Scout camp or the church camp is is roughly here. That's where we had parked the engine and the trucks originally. That was the address that we were given. That was the first place we showed up trying to figure out where we needed to be.
And is this all inside County, Ohio that we see on this map?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, so you're parked roughly where along Mount Hope Road?
Say again.
Where are you parked roughly along Mount Hope Road in this picture?
Roughly, we're parked right there at that intersection,
Okay.
right in front of the church camp.
Okay. And you were able to get to the location of a well.
Yeah, we had to cut a tree out of the way. The brush truck that we had there had chainsaws, so we cleaned it out so we could get access back a field road or logging road back to the field.
All right. So we see in this picture we have a map, and we have looks like a pin at the top there. What's the pin at the top of the map we see on the overhead?
That's roughly the location of the well where we were requested to pump the water out of.
Okay, so where is the well located?
The well was about 500 to 600 yards back through this field. You had to go through a field next to the road, and then there was a wood line where it was extremely muddy. You went through a couple hundred yards of wood line, and then back into it opened up into a large field again that you could not see from the roadway.
Okay. What was the weather like that day?
Rainy. It was drizzling rain when we arrived. It was a little cool for June, and then the rain just continually picked up as the day went along.
Do you recall the weather for the week or the weeks before? Do you recall what the weather was like that June?
Pretty typical June weather. I mean, it was, most days sunny, I guess.
Ohio.
Yeah, one day one thing, one day another.
Or every 5 minutes one thing.
Yeah.
Something else another 5 minutes. All right. So, so you get to this field. Who's with you when you get to the field?
When we get to the field, it is myself, my brother, Rick Gamble, and Dan Shirey.
Okay. Is there anyone else there besides volunteer firemen?
Yes, there were 3 detectives.
Okay. Did you see the well when you got to the field?
No, you could not see the well until they walked us over and pointed directly at it.
Could you describe it to the jury? What did the well look like?
The well was ground level. It was completely surrounded by grass. The grass at the time was probably 2 to 2.5, 3 feet tall. You could have just walked right into the well. You couldn't see it. The detectives took us over, pointed at the well, and asked us to try and pump the water out of it. There's no way you could have possibly seen it.
Let the record reflect any witness would have been marked as state's exhibits 26, 27, 28, and 29.
Sir, could you peruse those exhibits for me? Sir, what are these exhibits?
I'm going to put them up on the board. For the record, Your Honor, I'm placing on the overhead what's been marked State's Exhibit 26. Sir, do you recognize this State's Exhibit 26?
Yes, sir.
What is State's Exhibit 26?
That is the second field that we entered past the tree line and the location of the well.
Does that appear to be a true and accurate rendition of that field on June 12, 2019?
Yes, sir.
All right, for the record, this will be State's Exhibit 27. Sir, what does State's Exhibit 27 today?
That's the same field, and that is close to the well location.
And we see anything in the background of this picture?
Yes, that's the SUV of the detectives that I first encountered when walking into the field.
Okay. Is this a true and accurate depiction of the scene on June 12, 2019?
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit 28. Sir, what is depicted in State's Exhibit 28?
That is the well that we were requested to pump out.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of the well on June 12, 2019?
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit 29. Sir, what does this depict?
That is the well that we were requested to pump out.
You'd indicated, I believe, in your testimony that it was full of water.
Yes.
Okay. Approximately, let's set a little foundation here. Sir, we'll get into the details a little bit later, but at some point in you and the other firemen's recovery, did you get a rough estimate of the depth of the well?
Yeah, we were told when we showed up on location that the well was roughly 30 feet deep, and that was real accurate, come to find out.
Okay. All right, so you arrived at the scene. What was the first action you all took at that point?
We accessed the well, tried to move back some of the vegetation, and tried to see what the depth was, what we thought we could do to remove the water from the well, and see what the ground was like around the well, so that if we didn't want to make it collapse or fall in, was just to access the scene at the time.
Okay. And what was one of the first obstacles that you all had to try to deal with?
The biggest obstacle was actually accessing the field itself with the trucks. Our trucks will pump water, but they won't pump water from that depth. And the truck that we have that would even be capable of doing such a thing, we couldn't even get back in that field.
Okay. So was there a plan or a discussion of what to do at that point?
Yeah, me and my brother, Rick and Dan, then decided that we needed to find generators, a portable pump. We had some rope back at the station. We had a large that we had used before for extrication. It's a large metal hook that was heavy enough that we felt like if we hung it down there that we could feel something with it as we slowly moved it around. Then at that point, everybody went to gather these materials.
Okay. Were you able to acquire some materials to try to pump out the well?
Yes, sir. Dan actually had to go to, I believe it was his father's house, and asked to borrow a portable pump, a trash pump, water pump. It had a motor on it, so that we could portably get it back there, and he had several feet of hose to try and pump out the well. We got ropes, hooks, and also brought another truck that would be able to access the field.
Okay. All right, may I approach?
May.
Let the record reflect that the opposing counsel states exhibits 30 and 31.
Sir, I'm handing you what have been marked as States Exhibits 30 and 31. Could you take a look at these items, please? Thank you.
So I'm going to place States Exhibit 31 on the overhead projector. Sir, what is depicted in States Exhibit 31?
That is Rick and Mike.
I apologize, States Exhibit 30.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Rick and Mike attempting to get the hard suction hose down in the well so we can prime it to begin pumping out the well.
Okay. Who is holding the hose?
That's Mike. The assistant chief in the white hard hat is Rick. That's my brother.
Okay. States Exhibit 31. What does this depict?
That's the hose in the well that we were pumping out with the trash pump.
And do these two pictures accurately depict the scene
On June 12, 2019.
Yes, sir.
Now, were you successful pumping the water out of the well?
We removed between, I'd say, 12 to 15 feet of water. It's probably closer, right around 13 feet of water from the well. And then the pump would not create enough suction to lift that much head pressure to pump the water out at that point.
Okay. Was it continuing to rain at that point as well?
Oh, extremely, yes.
All right. I assume is it safe to assume there was more water coming back into the well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Were you able to observe that from
Yes.
the scene? Okay. So, were any further efforts to pump out the well made?
We tried for quite a while. I'd say over a couple hours to pump the well, and then we even talked about going and getting a smaller pump, like a sump pump, a small garden hose style pump. We figured maybe it would have less head pressure and a generator to run it off of, so that we could maybe pump the water down farther.
And
but we did not at that time.
Okay. So after your efforts to pump the well, what was the next plan?
Mike had mentioned he had some heavy fishing gear and had some hooks that he thought maybe we could get down in there, that we could feel around the well and at least try and tell if there was something there. And that's the time when we had hooked up the extrication hook, and I had laid on the ground and was trying to fish around the well and see if I could feel something.
All right. And how long did you ultimately determine that there was something in the well?
When we was trying to pump the water out, I had the hook in the well and was moving it around, and I couldn't tell if I was hitting the hard suction hose that we used or if I was hitting something else. I could feel something with the hook, but I had at that time had no luck in actually hooking it at that time.
After they quit pumping the water out, and was the pump hose removed at that point?
Yes, sir. Once we figured we could not pull any more water out of the well, Mike had went to see if he could find some heavy fishing equipment, something, and at that time we pulled the hoses out and given me a little better access to move the rope. The way the well was shaped at the top, it's very small hole, a few feet in diameter, and then the well would actually, as it went down, it got bigger. So when they moved the hose, it let me lay down and reach my arm farther down in the well and move the hook around, and that's when I was like, I'm pretty sure that I felt something in the well. And at that time, I felt it move once, and then I touched it again, moved the rope where I thought it would be around what was in the well, and I yanked on it, and I felt it hook in at that time. It was very heavy.
From the time that the pump hose was removed to when you were able to hook the object, how long did that take?
Actually, it went quicker than probably within 20 minutes.
Okay. You indicated that whatever you had hooked was heavy.
Yes, sir.
Why do you say that?
We're pulling on roughly a 1/2 inch diameter rope, and when I hooked it, I lifted, and I could tell I had a hold of something that was moving, but it was very hard to move.
Okay. What did you do then?
Once I realized I had something, Dan and my brother Rick were standing there. I looked at my brother, I went, "I've got something." Grabbed the rope, and I lifted on the rope and handed him a section of it, and he stood above me, and then Dan also come in to help, and we started lifting the rope out of the well.
Were you able to successfully lift the object you'd hooked out of the well?
Yes, sir.
How long did it take to extricate that object from the well?
Once we hooked it, we had it out of the well within minutes.
Okay.
Just very quickly. When we got the object to the top of the well, it would not come out of the top of the hole. We hooked it about halfway down, and when it come out, it was coming at an angle. So when we got it to the top, we couldn't lift it out with the rope, and that's when I laid on the ground, grabbed the crates, repositioned them, and then lifted them out and rolled it onto the ground.
Could you describe what you saw pulled out of the well?
It was 2 milk crates. The milk crates were tied together, open end to open end. They were tied with copper wire, I believe, tie wire. It looked like they used. It could even been a few tie wraps or zip ties on it. Then there was a chain wrapped around it with padlocks, and you could see the rocks inside it.
Okay. Did you notice anything else at that point?
You noticed there was a package inside of it. Yes.
Anything else that you could sense or see or
No, sir.
any smells associated with the package?
When it come to the top of the well, and we removed it from the well at that moment, no, there was not.
What did you do with it once you got it out of the well?
Once it was removed from the well, we felt like we had accomplished a task at first. We'd been given a job to do, and once we got it to the top of the well, we felt like we had done what we was asked, and it's almost kind of a moment of relief that we had found it. And then everyone just kind of realized what it was, and we all walked away from it.
Were there any changes in the item once it started draining water?
Yes, sir. Within a few minutes of us all walking away, that was about the time we had called him off of, "Don't go get your fishing gear. Come on back and bring the truck. We need the truck to remove this item from the field." It was probably roughly 10 minutes. He hadn't gotten that far. He came back. He backed the truck into the field over next to the well, and myself and Dan Shirey were headed around the truck to load it, and that's when you smelled it. It was very strong.
What kind of smell was it?
Rot, death.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Let the record reflect that the opposing counsel have been marked as state's exhibits
32, 33, 34, and 35. So I'm asking you again to look at State's Exhibits 32 through 35. I'll place on the overhead, sir, what's the marked State's Exhibit 32. Sir, what does this depict?
That's Dan Shirey in the white T-shirt, and that is myself reaching into the well to try and remove the crates.
Okay. This photograph, do we see part of the crate there in the photograph?
That is where it had just started to come up and was at an angle and was hitting the top of the well.
And the previous photographs that we depicted here with the well without anybody around it, is this the same well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. State's Exhibit 33. What does this depict?
That is us still trying to remove the crates from the well. Dan and my brother were trying to hold it. We did not want we didn't want the weight or anything to readjust and move and lose what we had brought to the top of the well.
State's Exhibit 34. Sir, what does this depict?
That's the crates that we had hooked. That is myself removing the hook from the crates after I had reached in and readjusted it and got a firm grip of it to pull it out of the well.
So, where we see this hook, this yellow thing extended from your hand, is that a metal hook?
Yes, sir.
And is that where it was able to hook?
Just by luck. Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit 35. Sir, what does this depict?
That is the crate once it was removed from the well, and we removed the hook and equipment from around it.
Sir, you previously described the crates all this time. Does this give you an accurate depiction of what you remember?
Yes, sir.
All right, what are we seeing in this closer up view of State's Exhibit?
It's the white and black, or the zip ties that they use to tie the crates together, and also to tie the chain to the crates so that the chain would not come off of the crates as it was being moved, and the rocks and weights that are inside of it.
These pictures I've showed you, State's Exhibits 33 through 35, do they accurately depict the scene at that well on June 12, 2019?
Yes, they do.
Sir, in your capacity as an electrician, as a volunteer fireman, are you
often required to move heavy objects around.
Yes, sir.
From your experience and understanding, did you have an estimate of the weight of that object?
Yeah, I would say it's anywhere between 60 to 80 pounds.
And sir, when you pull an object up through water, does that add to the level of force needed to pull that out?
Yes, sir.
So you get it out. Did you do anything to change or alter those crates at that point?
No, sir.
Okay. What happened at that point?
Once it was removed and we had been asked by the deputies to try and help them transport it out of the field, we backed our brush truck over close to the crates, and that's when we walked around the back of the truck to load it, Dan and myself, and the smell hit us. Dan at that time turned around and couldn't do it and returned to the front of the truck. I went back there by myself, picked it up, loaded it into the back of the truck, and took a ratchet strap and hooked it around it so that we would not lose it or it would not be damaged, and tied it down and removed it from the field.
Drove it back with the brush truck?
Yes, sir.
All right, you removed it from the field. What happened to it at that point?
When we removed it from the field, I drove the brush truck out of the field with the crates in the back, and the deputies asked us if we could remain on scene and help transport it into the coroner's vehicle.
Okay. And was that done?
Excuse
Did
me?
the coroner arrive on the scene?
Yeah, it took roughly, it seemed like probably a lot longer sitting there than what it was. But I'd say it was roughly an hour, maybe a little more, a little less. And that we sat out there while it was raining, waiting on the coroner to arrive. I had at that time talked to Dan and Mike and Rick, and they took all of the other firefighting equipment and everything back to the shop, back to the FD, and at that time tried to get everything back in order for the next run.
All right. Do you have anything else to do with this extraction at that point?
No, once the coroner arrived, I helped him load it into the back of his van, and then that was it.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Tiemann. Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine.
Your Honor, no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine.
Briefly, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Campbell.
When you encountered the deputies coming out of the scene originally, when you got to the scene, you stated that you walked into the field after you did not meet any law enforcement
Yes,
or
yes,
other
ma'am.
emergency personnel on the roadway
Yes, ma'am.
at the address that you thought you were being called to, correct?
Yes.
When the vehicle that you encountered that you believe had some type of law enforcement personnel in it as you were walking down that fieldway, did you see who all was in the vehicle?
No, not at first.
Okay.
I was in street clothes at the time. My turnout gear was in the truck. I was just walking through the field, so I grabbed my radio, yelled at my brother and Dan that I believe I had found someone, that they should come back. And at that point, the deputies pulled up and identified themselves.
Okay, so were you at their vehicle speaking to them?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you see who all was inside the vehicle?
I seen the two deputies sitting up front, and
Was there a passenger in the back seat?
yes, ma'am.
Do you see the gentleman sitting over there in the gray shirt?
It was Daniel.
Daniel Groves?
Yes, ma'am.
So you know who he is?
We went to school together.
Okay. Was he the person that was sitting in the back seat of that law enforcement vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any redirect, Mr. Teeman?
No, sir. Thank you.
Says witness excused.
Yes, he is, Your Honor.
Witness is excused, Your Honor.
You're free to go. Thank you. Mr. Teeman, you may inquire.
Sir, would you state your name for the record?
My name is Dan Shirey.
How do you spell your last name for the court reporter?
It's Shirey.
Where do you live?
Out around Otway, Tick Ridge, Otway.
All right, it's my understanding you're a volunteer fireman?
Yes, sir.
Who do you serve with?
Otway.
And what is your role at the Otway Fire Department?
Just a firefighter.
How long have you been with the Otway Fire Department?
About 8 years.
What are your you mentioned you're just a firefighter. I think you're being somewhat self-deprecating.
Well,
What do you do there at the fire department?
Of course, we go on fire calls, auto accidents, of course, rescue and recovery. Sometimes we get called to help with the squad, lift assist, a little bit of everything.
All right. Were you called on for a situation on June 12th of 2019?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your recollection of that situation.
When our pagers went off and the call come in from the county, it was odd because rather than to list what the nature of the call was, they said to have someone call county, call the dispatch. Of course, we kind of knew what had been going on, and I think most of us had an idea what it was about. But we got to the fire station, and then one of us, I don't remember which one, called into county, and they said to meet what we was looking to do, and we'd meet with the Sauter County Sheriff's Department at the scene.
All right. What was your understanding of what they were wanting you to do?
To try to recover a body in the bottom of a well.
Okay. And where were you directed to go?
It was an address on Mount Hope Road. I don't recall the exact address, but it was directly across the road from the Mount Hope Bible School there. And when we got there, there wasn't really no one else there. We didn't really see anything.
What'd you do then?
I believe me and one of the other, maybe Rick, went back the other way looking for, actually, I think we went to the home to see if we could find the sheriff, anyone from the sheriff's department, which there was a deputy there.
What home was that?
Pardon?
What home was that you went to?
The Groves residence.
All right. Daniel and Jessica Groves?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Daniel and Jessica Groves?
I just know of them, don't really know them personally.
Okay. What was the weather like that day?
It was rainy, pretty heavy rain.
So at that point, you're at the Groves residence, you see a deputy. What happens then?
He told us that I believe Captain Murphy and a couple of the other folks that we needed to meet with was down out the road or in the field looking for this well. So we just headed back to the initial spot where we had stopped to begin with, across from Mount Hope Bible School.
Were you able to meet up with Steve Gamble at that point?
Yes. Steve was in one of the bigger engine, just staying at that scene to see if anybody ever come to kind of guide us where to go.
Are you familiar with the terrain out there on Mount Hope Road?
Somewhat.
What was it? What was the terrain like?
It's hilly, curvy, hilly. Typical for kind of out in that area.
And were you provided additional information as to where to go at that point?
Yeah. Eventually, the folks from the sheriff's department come through the field and told us where we needed to go, and we kind of followed them back through the field, and to the scene of the well.
Okay. Was this all even terrain at that point when you're going back to this field?
It was, kind of hilly and rutted out. The road was, it wasn't really a improved road. It was just an old path through a field, basically, in back into another field. Probably a quarter mile off the road, off of Mount Hope Road. And, I think it may even went through a creek bed. And it was pretty rough terrain. We couldn't get a big truck back there, so we had our four-wheel drive brush truck that we drove back along with the folks from the sheriff's department.
All right. Who was in the brush truck?
At that point, it was I believe it was me, Steve Gamble, and Rick Gamble.
Okay. At some point, you arrived at what was known as the well at that point?
Yes, sir.
And what did the well look like when you first got there?
It was really hard to see. It was kind of in the middle of the field. And, the vegetation, it was kind of growed up. And, if you didn't know it was there, it could be kind of dangerous. You could drove right in it or walked in it. Wasn't real big. I would say probably 3 foot, 3.5 foot in diameter. And like I said, vegetation had grown up around it and over it, so you really couldn't see much.
Did you notice if it was full?
Yes, it was.
Full of water?
Full of water.
Okay. Mr. Gamble's already testified a little bit about the efforts that were made to get a pump. What was your role in getting the materials and equipment together to get to the scene?
Well, as far as, once we got there and kind of sized up the scene, the thought was, well, we can't get one of our trucks back here to try to pump it. And probably even if we did, it wouldn't pump it because the depth or the deputy said that the well was somewhere around 30 foot, they thought, or that's what they'd been told. And but anyway,
from your experience with the well, did that appear to be fairly accurate?
Well, yeah. Once we got the other equipment and dropped the hook down and measured the rope that we had dropped into the well, it seemed to be pretty accurate, about 30 feet.
Okay.
But I'd went and left the scene to go get a pump, and then come back, and I brought a pump, and we tried to pump it, and it only pumped down to about 10 feet, and then the pump wouldn't pump any more after that point. It was too much head pressure to be able to pull the water up that high.
Okay. And the whole time, what's the weather like?
It's raining pretty steady the whole time.
Okay. So what happened at that point?
At that point, we'd also brought, some different gears, some ropes and some hooks and different things just in case, to try to use as a retrieval. And Steve Gamble, he had been, even as we was trying to pump, and the pump would lose prime, so it was, then we'd have to go back and reprime it. And, we fought with the pump for quite a while. I don't know, probably an hour at least once we got the pump there. But Steve had started lowering the rope down with the hook, and the first rope we had, I think, was only about 20 feet long, so he had to tie a piece of webbing, kind of like a lanyard or a strap, onto the end of it to make it long enough to hit the bottom. And, as he was trying to feel the bottom, if you will, or see if he could hook something, he could tell by the feel of the rope that there was something down there. And, he just kept, trying to hook into something to see if he was able to hook it. And, after, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe another 45 minutes to an hour, eventually, he was able to hook, of course, what ended up being the milk crate.
Let me ask you about the timeline on that. Y'all are standing in the rain. At one point you have the pump trying to suck the water out, and another point you're fishing around.
Right.
Is it safe to say when exactly things happened in this timeline? Maybe a little inaccurate in your recollection?
As far as, I'm sorry.
As far as when you started fishing it out, how long it took to fish it out, when you started pumping?
Yeah, I would have, from the time we got to the scene, like I said, we went back there, sized it up. I left to go get a pump, come back. That was probably close to an hour from the time that we initially arrived till I got the pump back on the scene. Probably tried to pump the well for 45 minutes to an hour. Like I said, we was able to pump it down about 10 feet approximately, and then at that point the pump wouldn't pump water anymore, so we kind of give up on the pumping at that point. So there's probably close to 2 hours from the time we arrived at the scene, and then I'm guessing another 45 minutes to an hour until the time that Steve was able to hook the milk crate and retrieve the.
Did you assist in lifting the item out of the well?
Yes.
Was it heavy?
Very, very heavy. It was about all 2 or 3 of us could do to, at the end of a rope, weight like that's kind of tough. I would estimate the crate and everything probably weighed 75, 80 pounds would be my guess.
All right, I'm going to put up on the screen here, sir, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 33. Do you recognize what this photograph depicts?
Yeah, it's us at the well, and the crate's just starting to come out.
That's
You on the right, and is that Steve on the left there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that Rick standing in the background there?
I believe so.
State's Exhibit 34. Is this the item that you guys pulled out of the well?
Yes, it is.
Those two pictures accurately depict your recollection of the scene that day on June 12th?
Yes.
Once you got the item out of the well, what happened next? What did you do next?
Well, once we got it out and set it down, then I think everybody kind of comes to the realization that what was in there, and that this was loss of a human life, and we just kind of all walked away and tried to regain our composure.
This isn't something you normally deal with as a fireman?
Not. We've been on calls where we've had to help recover deceased people, help transport them out, but nothing like this.
So, did you assist in removing that from the scene?
It sat there for, 10 or 15 minutes, and Mike McCoy, who had left to go try to get some other gear to help retrieve, had come back in the four-wheel drive, we call it the brush truck. And so, when he come back with that, then the folks from the sheriff's department asked if we could transport the crate and the body to down to the end of the field by the road, to where we could, the coroner could meet us there. So I believe it was Steve Gamble and myself went to lift it up into the back of the truck, but I couldn't. The smell overwhelmed me, and so I wasn't able to help actually lift it into the truck.
Okay. Did you have any other role in this extraction after that point?
Not really. Once we got it in the back of the truck and secured it to the back of the truck, we just cleaned up the scene, got all of our equipment, loaded it back in the truck, went back out of the field, which at this time, with all the rain and everything, I didn't know if we was going to make it back out of the field because it was rutted out and real muddy, and but we were able to get back out to the end of the road. And at that point, Steve stayed in the brush truck with the body, and the rest of us left in the other engine that we'd had and left out on by the road, and went back to the station to put our gear away and all of our equipment away.
All right. Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Kingman, Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine the witness.
Just a second. No question, Your Honor.
Mr. Stratton, Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine the witness.
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Both you and your colleague, good morning, by the way.
Good morning.
Both you and your colleague talked about the difficulty of accessing that area in the back and some different things that needed to be done so your vehicles could access that. You also talked about the road not being an actual road and it was washed out and different things like that. Do you recall that testimony?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We all have a tendency of doing it. So what would access be like to that area on four-wheelers or something to that effect? Would they still have the same struggle of getting back there on a four-wheeler?
It would be a little easier than in a vehicle.
Okay, easier than in a vehicle.
Easier
But
than a
there
car.
would still be some difficulties ascertaining that area?
For a four-wheeler, probably not so much because, as I explained, it was rutted out. You know, the vehicle leaves a rut, and the four-wheeler could probably ride in the middle between the ruts that the vehicle left.
Okay, so it could be accessible by a four-wheeler?
Much easier than in a
Much easier than the vehicles that you were
and certainly a
attempting
fire
to
truck.
use? Okay. Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Scott, you're correct.
No, Your Honor.
Is this witness excused?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Ms. Scott?
Yes, excuse, thank you.
Mr. Stratton? Sir, you're free to go.
Okay, so that was the firefighters that extracted the crate and Dylan from the well. They did not need to keep zooming in. That was scaring me for a second. So we are going to now watch. We're actually going to go to Dylan now. I mean, sorry, not Dylan. We're going to go to Daniel Jr. So their teenage son at the time. He is going to testify. So hopefully this will give us some more insight into Jessica and Daniel Sr. as parents, and see maybe either, solidifying what we're thinking, or it might, give us more questions in the aspect of why is there the contrast of different parenting between Daniel Jr. and Dylan. So let's dive into Daniel Jr. and see what types of questions they get into with him.
During the break, for the media's purposes, we did consult with the Daniel Groves Jr.'s guardian, and she did object to him being filmed or photographed, so I would ask that the cameras be lowered such as not to catch his image during his testimony. There'll be no photography during his testimony either. Man, if you'll stand here, you raise your right hand for me, please. You raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please have a seat.
Sir, I need you to tell the jury your name.
My name is Daniel Groves, Daniel Allen Groves.
Okay. You're Daniel Groves Jr., is that right?
Yes,
Okay. How old are you?
I'm 15 years old.
Such as near away from the microphone.
Okay. How old are you?
I'm 15 years old.
Okay. And you go to school here in Scioto County?
Yes, at Northwest High School.
Okay.
He's a, if you ask him to speak up as well.
Just speak up a little bit if you can. All right?
Almost like you're yelling at that officer in the back of the courtroom, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Your parents are Daniel and Jessica, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, not where you live, but who do you live with?
I live with my aunt and my uncle, Phyllis Shirey.
Okay. And when did that happen, that you went to live with your aunt and uncle?
Up near beginning of 2019 in April, I believe.
Okay.
Beginning of April.
Okay. And was that the
Young man, you're going to have to speak up. Scoot your chair forward a little bit. That'll help a little bit. All right. And just speak up real loud so the people in the back can hear you.
Was that because Children's Services placed you there?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that was in April?
Yes.
All right. We're here today to talk to you about your baby brother, Dylan. Would you tell the jury, did you ever see Dylan with any injuries?
He did have some swelling in his head, but otherwise I did not see any injuries upon his body.
Was his head bruised in any way?
It appeared bruised, yes.
Okay, when you say it appeared bruised, tell them what you saw.
Like blackened and purple, what you would imagine as a bruise.
And where was that?
Upon all of his head, all the way around, most just top of his head.
Okay. Was there a time when...
Speak up a little bit.
And I can't see where he's indicating on his own body.
Why don't you step up front here, Ms. Scott, so you can see.
Was there a time when baby Dylan was no longer at your house?
For a period of a couple weeks, yes.
Okay. And then later, did he not, he was gone from your house also?
Explain that.
In other words, after you saw these injuries, what happened with the baby?
After I saw these injuries, he was around for a little while, and they seemed to deplete and go down, and then that was when he was disappeared for about 2 weeks.
Okay. Did you ask your parents about the injuries to the baby, or did they tell you what happened to the baby?
They gave me explanation for the injuries, yes.
Okay. Who did that? Was that your mom or your dad?
My father.
Okay. Was your mom there?
At that time, yes, my mom was there.
Okay. What were you told about what happened to the baby?
As well as somewhere near the beginning, I was told about him getting a dream catcher stuck within his arm and him swinging a tiny stone up to his head. I'm not sure if that caused the swelling of his head. I don't believe it was.
Okay. You didn't do anything to hurt that baby, did you?
I did not do a single thing to hurt that baby.
Okay. Do you know who did?
I do not.
Okay. Daniel, I've talked to you twice before this, is that right?
Yes.
And ask you the same questions I'm asking you right now?
Yes.
Okay. When we've talked before, and I'm going to ask you in here for the jury, was there a time when you were asked to give urine to either of your parents?
Yes.
Okay, tell the jury what you were doing.
It was like a cup it wasn't like a standard casual cup you'd grab out of a cabinet in your house, and it was probably about every couple months.
Okay. And who were you giving that to?
Mainly my father.
Okay. Do you know did you see him do anything with it after you gave it to him?
I've seen him put it into like a capped lid bottle, but that's all I've seen him do with it.
Okay. And this was before you were removed by Children's Services?
Yes.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm still struggling to hear him. I couldn't hear whether or not he said mom or dad on who gave the urine to.
He said he's father. You can step up here, this guy.
I just have a few more questions. Tell the jury when you first realized that your mom might be pregnant.
It was somewhere around in November, or near the beginning of November in 2018.
Okay. And you remember that because your birthday's around that time?
Yeah, and I remember the event of confronting my mother with it.
Okay. What did you say to her?
I simply just asked her, because I've been noticing for a while that she seemed to be swelling like she was pregnant.
I had asked her about it, and she told me that yes, she was pregnant.
Okay. And you think that was early November?
Yes.
Yeah, just a minute.
Good afternoon, Daniel. I just have a few questions for you, okay?
Okay.
Okay. And I apologize, your voice was so soft and where I was sitting at, I apologize, I have to go over this with you again, but I didn't hear a lot of what you said, so I just want to make sure I have my notes accurately, okay?
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. The injuries that you described to baby Dylan, I believe that you stated, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you saw his head a little bit swollen and a bruise. Is that correct?
It was most of his head that seemed like a bruise, yes.
Okay. And I know you were motioning and you were doing some motioning, and I'm sorry, my view was blocked. Could you point to that again?
Describing
please?
his head, it would be mostly upper of his, like his scalp. It wouldn't be his whole face, it would be just of his scalp and the top part of his head.
His scalp was a little bit bruised and it was swollen.
Yes, it was around all of his head, around about where you would expect hair to be.
Okay. And his head was tiny, correct?
Yes.
He was a tiny, okay. And did you see any cuts?
Cuts? No.
Okay. Did you see any, like, fresh blood?
No.
Okay. And can you please tell me again when you believe that you observed this injury?
Personally, I did not observe the injury. I came home from school one day and he had.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was a bad question on my behalf. I'll re-ask the question. When did you see the bruising and the swelling?
I do not know an exact date of when it happened. It was sometime after the Dreamcatcher incident I had described.
Okay, and so I know that you were taken out of the home on April the 24th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me, obviously it was before that, correct?
Yes.
So do you know if it was around Easter time that year? Do you know how many weeks it was prior to you coming out of the home?
It might have been 2 or 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks before you were taken out of the home on April the 24th. Right. You saw the bruising and swelling 2 to 3 weeks prior to you being taken out of the home on April 24th.
I am a little bit unsure with it. I'd say it'd be more than 2 or 3 weeks. I am slightly unsure, but that's, yes.
So it may have been a little bit earlier than 2 or 3 weeks.
Objection, Your Honor, he said he doesn't know.
Okay. At first you thought it was 2 or 3 weeks, but it may not be 2 or 3 weeks now?
Looking back at the dates, I do believe it may have been longer, but I'm also not sure.
Okay. And then after you saw the bruising and swelling to the baby's head, you stated to Miss Hutchinson when she was asking you, at some point in time after that, you no longer saw baby Dylan at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall when that was in relation to you being taken out of the home on April the 24th?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do you know how many days after that bruising and swelling happened?
It would have probably at least been a week, but at the same time, I'm not sure.
Okay. Were you home, or did you come home when Patricia? Let me strike that, Your Honor. Do you know who Patricia Kraft is?
My old caseworker, yes.
Okay. Do you recall her coming to the home sometime at the end of March, and you would have come home during that time when she was there?
I do not recall many of her visits.
Okay. Do you recall any of the visits that you visited, that you were present when she was there at the same time?
Yeah, I remember visits where she was there. I just don't remember any of the details that she talked about.
Your Honor, may I get something off the table?
No.
And then you described a time period when you were providing, for lack of better words, some urine and putting it in a container for your father, I believe you said. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, do you recall, was that before baby Dylan was born or after baby Dylan was born?
There were periods of both before and after.
Okay, and do you know what he did with that urine?
As for sure, no, I was not.
Okay. Were you ever at a facility where he was requested to go into a restroom with somebody and give urine in a cup?
No.
Okay. Did you ever go into the restroom with him at the hospital and he asked you to pee in the cup for him versus him peeing in a cup?
At the hospital, no, I have not.
Okay. Have you ever been to Children's Services Agency up in New Boston?
Yes, but only like once.
Only once, okay. Did you ever go into the restroom with your dad there at that agency and pee in a cup that he was supposed to pee in a cup?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you ever do you know where juvenile court is downstairs on the second floor of this building?
Yes.
Have you ever been there?
No.
Okay. Did you ever come to court with your dad in mid-January and go into the restroom and pee in a cup for him?
No, I did not.
Okay.
All incidences of me doing that were at our own household.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Your Honor, if I can have just a second. Daniel, you resided with your parents the majority of your life, is that correct?
All of my life.
All of your life up
I was
until
removed. Yes.
April of last year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that your father took care of you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did your father ever injure you?
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you ever see your father injure baby Dylan?
No.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Ms. Scott?
Absolutely questions, thank you.
Any redirect?
Absolutely not, Your Honor.
Is this young man free to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Free to go.
You're free to go. This is going to be a good time to take our evening recess. Remember my earlier admonition to you, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on this case until it's finally submitted to you. Remember my earlier admonition to you. I know most people have I find out from my wife, I don't do Facebook, but a lot of people have a hard time staying off Facebook for more than a day or two at a time in a position to back on the record, 19 CR 586 A and B, State of Ohio versus Daniel Groves, State of Ohio versus Jessica Groves. We're in the courtroom, out of the presence of the jury. Does the state tend to call any other evidence or offer any more evidence in this matter in their case in chief?
No, Your Honor.
State rest at this time. Let's talk about exhibits before we talk about that. I have 79 exhibits marked and identified in this matter. Does the defense want to go through these one at a time or do them in groups?
I don't have any objections to them.
Groups are fine.
Groups are fine.
Let me ask, of the 79 exhibits, which of these are the state you're offering all 79?
We would move to admit them all.
All right. State's Exhibit 1, maternity records. Any objection from either defendant?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that was actually pretty short for Daniel Jr.'s testimony. Honestly, I figured it was going to be a bit longer, given how crucial it seemed that he could really add a lot to the trial, but to the case. But I guess it's mostly because his experience with his parents, or at least what he's portraying, is pretty neutral parent-child experience through his life. He doesn't seem like he was going to offer much more beyond that. One end of it is his parents truly could have treated him differently. On the other end of that, it could be that, it is what a difficult situation to be put in with having to testify against your parents as well, right? They can do horrible, horrible things, but, with unconditional love of children, it's definitely hard to be put in that position. So either way, totally understandable. I'm just going to scrub through this real quick and see if I'm going to just scrub down a bit on this video, see if that's all they're doing is going over some of the exhibits. And if that's the case, then we will stop at this point in the video. So give me 1 second. Let's just see what they say beyond this.
36 is an autopsy.
Yes.
It will be admitted with the one.
Okay. Yeah, they really are just going through the exhibits at this point. Okay. I'm just really shocked of how incredibly short that was, to be honest. I was really expecting some more critical details, and maybe I expected a bit more of direct questions, but it seems like they were just gonna keep getting objected anyway and sustained. So in any case, I think we're going to stop here for today. So we will have the testimony of both defendants tomorrow. In addition to, there is some interrogation footage as well. I will say that it is a little hard to hear what the defendant is saying in that. So tomorrow when we go over it, I'll be asking you guys kind of your thoughts if we should keep playing it. I don't have subtitles for it at the moment, so or if we don't play it live on stream, that's totally fine. It'll just be something that I subtitle and add in the more curated video at the end of next week. So we'll just play that one by ear. So yeah. Hey Zero, what's up? Did the mom testify? I'm pretty sure, yeah. I haven't watched, as I've mentioned, I don't actually watch these ahead of time, but it does say on this video that it's Jessica Groves, so yes, I believe that she did. And then Daniel also seems to, Daniel Sr., the other defendant, seems to have testified as well. So we'll be going through those two tomorrow, and then another video, like I said, of the interrogation, and there's some other investigators that testify as well. And then on Friday will be the closing statements and the verdict. So just to balance it out for the rest of the week, we will stop here, and I will see you guys tomorrow again at 1 p.m. EST. So have a fantastic rest of your day.